Howdy, y'all. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. One of the most complicated narratives to try to rein in for examination is that of the Holy Roman Empire. Through a rather tumultuous and convoluted collapse, Rome's power structure fractured before disintegrating completely. Or did it? After the power vacuum was created, numerous warring parties attempted to consolidate the power and ignite the spark that would create the new Rome. This struggle continued for centuries. At some point, the Franks, under Charlemagne, gained control, and they united most Germanic tribes before extending their territory significantly, forming the basis for the Holy Roman Empire. While that's a rather rudimentary way to describe the history, it certainly wouldn't make things any less complicated if we tried to actually decipher this entire narrative, piece by piece. The mainstream will tell us that the Franks and the Holy Roman Empire filled a void left after the fall of Rome, and most major cities which ended up within the new empire had ties to the earlier history, usually associated directly with Rome. It's all very cyclical. However, that's not the key facet of this video, which I think will make you question what you see, but rather, what if I told you that guilds and merchants, the same who played a key role in the rise and fall of many different kingdoms, also played a crucial role in controlling the Holy Roman Empire? Some of you may have assumed that, and others may be familiar with this history already, but the free and imperial cities of the Holy Roman Empire are the subject I'd like to dive deeper into. Our collection of photographs are definitely going to help change your perspective. We will be looking at Old World Cologne, Germany, before the World Wars, with the second one having left Cologne as no more than heaps of rubble. Cologne was rebuilt quickly after World War II. However, as you'll come to see in these photographs, the new city doesn't even begin to compare with the grandeur of the architecture which once lined every corner of this German metropolis. Free imperial cities formed as a necessity, we are told, following the founding of the Holy Roman Empire. Initially, Charlemagne utilized the ties in language, history, and the architecture, as well as promises of safety and riches to unite the petty kings in what would become his empire. These lower-level leaders usually ruled over set tracts of land which were controlled from large castles, sometimes even from fortified cities, most of which were said to have survived from Roman times, or they had been strategically rebuilt afterwards. This agreement was said to have worked for, relatively speaking, most of the first 400 years that it was in place. However, around the early 13th century, a shift occurred within the Holy Roman Empire. Certain merchants in some cities began making larger profits than were being taxed at the time by the empire, and these same powerful merchants also began to enlarge and fortify their own cities, leading to fear within the Holy Roman Empire of not only financial losses, but also of rebellion. At this time, the free and imperial city designation was created to help rein in these cities. While the title would imply that they gained more autonomy, and in some ways they really did, what the designation really was is it gave these cities a larger say in what the empire did and the policies it enacted, giving them representation at the imperial diet, which was much like a ruling body of the Holy Roman Empire. In return, the free and imperial cities were allowed to govern themselves, having to answer to no one except the Holy Roman Emperor. The free and imperial cities had the right to declare war, gain lands, and they controlled every facet of their trade and government. and in return, they basically paid much larger taxes to the empire and had a special seat on the imperial court. For reference, the Holy Roman Empire had roughly 4,000 locations that were large enough to be considered towns and cities. However, only 10% of these, or about 400 of them, had over 1,000 residents during the Middle Ages. The free and imperial cities came from these 400, yet by the year 1500, at the peak of the free and imperial cities, less than 200 actually held free and imperial status, a number which continued to dwindle rapidly. By 1521, 85 cities held free and imperial status, and that number dropped to 50 cities by the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. The Holy Roman Empire continued to hover around 50 free and imperial cities until its dissolution in the early 19th century. The largest of these free and imperial cities for much of this over 500-year history was Cologne. Initially, we're told Cologne was founded at the intersection of Rome's most important roads, an intersection of 5, with Cologne also being the center for water transport in the region. The Eiffel Aqueduct was founded by the Romans in 80 AD. It supplied Cologne with water and was one of the largest aqueducts ever created in Roman times. Under Roman law, Cologne was known as the colony of Claudius and the temple of Agrippina. The Latin term for colony is where the name Cologne derives from. By roughly 100 AD, Cologne was estimated to house 45,000 people. When Rome fell, only a few Germanic cities survived in the area, with Cologne being one of them. Under Roman rule, Cologne was a massive, completely fortified city with highly advanced architecture. Yet at the beginning of Holy Roman control, Cologne was estimated to have less than 5,000 people. Cologne was also the location where we're told all the Saxons and Frisians were said to be converted to Christianity. While that line within this narrative is rather concise, if we extrapolate on it, we can only imagine what that actually entailed. The quote, pagans were brought to Cologne to be converted, and Cologne was said to have some of the most advanced architecture in the world. We're told most of these conversions occurred at the Altar Dome, or Old Cathedral, which was the predecessor for the Cologne Cathedral, which, when completed, was the tallest building in the entire world. Of course, we're told the city was completely destroyed. In this instance, it was first sacked by the Vikings around 881 AD when it was completely demolished, but it was then reconquered by Henry the Fowler. We're told Cologne was among the most important religious towns to the Holy Roman Empire. The archbishops of Cologne were tasked with enlarging the city and founding the great architecture. We're told the massive Gothic cathedral was founded in 1248, but the construction process continued for hundreds of years, not being officially completed until 1880. Not only was Cologne a free and imperial city administered by the ruling merchants on the imperial diet, but Cologne was also a leading member of the Hanseatic League, which was essentially another way for merchants to strengthen ties and exploit trade for profit without those pesky rules that affected everyone else. Cologne, being central in the Rhine, spearheaded its growth as the trade capital of German-speaking lands, while also being one of the most important cathedrals in the entire world. The merchants, as stated numerous times in the current narrative, controlled every aspect of Cologne. The cathedral housed ancient relics and became a site of pilgrimage. The merchants formed secret societies and guilds to work behind the scenes with other free and imperial cities. However, when Black Death destroyed the city's population in 1349, and the tragedy was used as a way to gain wealth and land by some families, those certain merchants were quickly ostracized. In 1424, the Jewish population was evicted from the city. Cologne then experienced a sort of golden age, prospering in trade with the English crown through the Steelyard, or the Hanseatic League Trade Center in London. Cologne was central in trade from London the whole way to the southern parts of Italy, and indeed was considered the trade capital of German-speaking lands. For example, the Cologne penny was used throughout Europe and considered the standard currency of the High Middle Ages, and the merchants from Cologne could be found in every major city across Europe by roughly 1600. This was all occurring almost 150 years after certain merchants were removed from the city, and that's around the time that a printing press was founded in Cologne. We're told by 1464, Cologne was printing books. By the year 1500, Cologne had over 20 printing presses, which produced tens of thousands of copies of at least 1,200 different manuscripts. Did you ever wonder who was rewriting the narrative when written narratives first began? This may be a good place to look. With the Napoleonic Wars, Cologne was targeted and fell to the hands of Napoleon. It sort of seems that Napoleon was the final sweep to clean up the historical narrative that was being erased. But I digress. By 1815, Cologne and most of the Rhineland were awarded to the Kingdom of Prussia. After World War I, Germany was ordered demilitarized, which meant all of the massive city walls, many which stem from Roman times, were torn down. This included within the city of Cologne. We're told, rather nonchalantly in the narrative, that the massive stones and tens of thousands of bricks that were torn down in Cologne were then used to rebuild and pave the city, also used in forming the basis for the public park system. With the outbreak of World War II, and even for years beforehand, the narrative says that Cologne resisted Germany's trajectory. In part, this could be due to roughly 25,000 Jewish residents living in Cologne by 1933. It was only after the election of 1933 that the new ruling party of Germany then occupied the ancient city of Cologne. By 1938, most of the Jewish population had left the occupied city, and Germany had planned to rebuild Cologne in Old World glory. Again, we have to try to read between the lines, but Cologne was also the site of the first 1,000 bomber raid of World War II, which was also known as Operation Millennium. The successful plan destroyed 90% of the city's architecture and infrastructure, and the population dropped from roughly 750,000 people before the war to less than 25,000 people after the war. There was almost nothing left of Cologne, except the Cologne Cathedral, which even after 14 bombs were said to have hit the Cologne Cathedral, it remained relatively unscathed. That is old world architecture at its finest. Today we will, and have been so far, looking at Cologne, Germany, before the World Wars, when it was the mecca of German trade and old world architecture. And then we're comparing those photographs to the exact same locations in Cologne photographed following the rebuild after World War II. Hopefully, this is as eye-opening for you as it was for me, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts and ideas in the comment section down below. Also, for those wondering, cologne, like the fresh-smelling scent that humans use, is called Cologne because of the free and imperial city of Cologne. Here, in the city of Cologne, whose name derived from the Latin word colony, a merchant by the name of Johann Maria Farina began focusing on fragrances out of Asia to bring to the European market. In 1708, Farina wrote, and I quote, "I have found a fragrance that reminds me of an Italian spring morning, of mountain daffodils and orange blossoms after the rain," end quote. He named his fragrance Eau de Cologne, meaning water of Cologne, named after the location of the leading market where he lived and did business from. Unlike anything else that came before it, the fragrance of Eau de Cologne was used exclusively as a perfume, and used exclusively by the world's richest individuals, kings and queens. Eau de Cologne was said to have been sent to every royal house which the merchants of Cologne had previously done business with, and immediately it became referred to as miracle water or the fragrance of the gods. One vial of Eau de Cologne was said to have cost about half the yearly salary of a civil servant. Eau de Cologne's recipe has never been revealed, and Maria Farina's perfume shop in the city of Cologne, founded in 1709, is the oldest in the entire world. While Eau de Cologne is no longer produced, we also have original Eau de Cologne 4711, also produced in the city of Cologne from the year 1799 onward. It is still produced today, making it the oldest continuously produced fragrance perfume in the entire world. That's just a little extra to think about before I wrap up this video. But I honestly can't wait to hear your thoughts, your ideas, what has stood out to you the most about this narrative, and what has stood out to you the most within these photographs. And I can't wait to talk to you again on the next video.